Hi, smart moms and dads. We're so excited to have you join us for another episode of the Brainy Moms podcast, brought to you today by Learning RX Brain Training Centers. I'm Dr. Amy Moore, and I'm excited to tell you about today's episode, hosted solo by my co-host, Sandy Zamalis. Today, Sandy interviewed Lindsey Konchar. Lindsey is your favorite financial therapist, here to help you feel excited about money. And yes, she says that is possible. Money isn't just a math problem. There's always so much more to the equation. Merging behavioral therapy and financial education, Lindsey says she can help you live your dream life. So sit back and listen to the conversation between Sandy and Lindsey on a topic we all need to be a little smarter about, especially when it comes to helping our kids with financial literacy and our teens be a little smarter about money themselves. Here we go.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad you're here.
I am so excited.
Well, we're going to jump right on in if that's okay with you. We don't want to
Yes.
waste any conversation time.
I love it. Yes, let's do it.
Let's get started by having you tell our listeners how you got into the financial space, because you didn't start off there, right?
I did not start off there. That is correct. Yes. So I have been a licensed therapist for, since 2019. And at that time, I was working, in a clinic and it was great. And then COVID happened and, all the things. And I also had a baby during COVID. And so that was my introduction into motherhood, which I, don't recommend having a baby in a pandemic, but life is such. And at that time, I went through it with becoming a mom. I was really experiencing a lot of postpartum anxiety and all sorts of symptoms that came with that. And I think a lot of it related to the fact that I really did miss my career. Like I loved being a social worker. I loved doing outpatient therapy. I loved a lot of it. But I also loved being home with my baby. And so, as with many women now, we want it all. And I wanted to figure out how to make that happen. And I started dabbling in, all sorts of things from working at home and how I could kind of build out this laptop life and whatnot. And in 2022, I was actually at a self-development conference, a professional development conference. And I had this very clear moment where I was like, I want to help people with their money, but I'm a therapist. Like, who is going to listen to me? And fast forward, that was in October 2022. And fast forward to April 2023, I was listening to an audiobook totally unrelated to any of this stuff. And the author said the words financial therapist. And I quite literally was on my street. I paused the book. I parked on my driveway and I came like flying through the door. And my husband was like, "What is going on? Are you okay?" And I was like, "I need to Google something like right now." And I did. And it turns out, because I hold my MSW, that I did qualify for the certifications of becoming a financial therapist. And so we have a 48-hour rule in our house. And I waited the 48 hours, but we were both like, yeah, that feels very aligned. And I really just dove straight in. I got certified by the end of May. And I haven't looked back. And so a big part of our story as well is on, the personal side of things. My husband and I had been on our own self-care journey already for years. And so it just, when they say that like you look back and all the dots start to connect, that was kind of the moment for us. And like I said, I've been doing that now for almost coming up on 2 years and it's been awesome.
I love those kind of serendipitous encounters, right? Where you're just like, that's it. That's the thing. That's how I
Yes.
got involved in, I'm a cognitive therapist. So that's how I got involved in cognitive training. I was on a teacher track and found this and was like, nope, I need to divert and go a
Yes.
different
And it's
direction.
hard to divert, but when
It
you do,
is.
it feels so good. Yeah.
Well, we're so glad you're here to talk about money, because I don't know why it isn't more of a money. I think does involve therapy, because I love your premise that there's so much emotion tied to money, and we all have different, I would say, money personalities. We've all grown up differently with money. So let's start there. How do you start to understand your own personal relationship with money?
Such a good question. what I think I wish so many people understood that is really not talked about is your money habits are actually established by the time you are 10 years old. There's research out of the University of Michigan about this. And so when you start to understand that piece, like that is very young. So much of your upbringing actually has to do with how you are presenting with money now and the relationship that you have with it. Now, the beautiful thing about this and the work that I do is there is so much hope in it because habits can, of course, be changed. So if somebody heard that and was like, oh, I'm messed up for life, like that is not the case. We can change habits, which is so amazing. But when you think about that, you start leaning into like, what did I learn about money when I was growing up? What did I not learn? And also what was explicit and what was implicit, right? We call this a money story. And for me, my parents fought about money all the time. Like anytime money was being talked about, it was being fought about. And so I internalized that for a very long time as like money is bad. Money creates these terrible, scary conversations and arguments. And then fast forward to when I was 16, I actually moved into a friend's house. Mom thought I was living at dad's, dad thought I was living at mom's. I was at my friend's house. And her parents were still, happily together. At this point, my parents had already been divorced, money being the cause of their divorce. And having that different viewpoint, having that different lens into like, wait, they do openly talk about money in front of us. Like it wasn't not like extensively, but it was just like, oh, wait, there's another way. And it felt different. Like I knew if I spilled my juice, it wasn't going to be like World War III. It was going to be like, we'll get the carpet clean or we'll get a new rug or like whatever, And I just realized like, wow, there is a different way. And I was really lucky to have that experience early on I always say it's like my own version of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is kind of a controversial book. So that's not what I that's not what I recommend people start with reading. But the premise is there, right? Of like I really did have these two viewpoints into like what it could do for you. And so that was really a big part. So when I met my now husband, I was 24 and I was like, look, buddy, we got to talk about money in this relationship because, right. And so we started doing that work and I had habits that I needed to change. And that's true for anybody. And also, same with my husband, like he saw one thing, I saw another. And so coming together, that made a big difference for us. So I think when you're trying to examine now in present day, like what's going on, it is really important to take stock of where did you come from? What have you learned? And was that helpful or not?
That was really smart because I think money is like one of the top 5 reasons that people, otherwise that marriages don't make it. So catching that on the front end was just amazingly wise of you. Let's talk about from that perspective. What do you think some of the emotional barriers that what are some of those emotional barriers that people bring to the table?
Undoubtedly, with women specifically, I would say it's avoidance. I see that all the time. And avoidance can look a couple different ways. Hands raised, you're like, oh, yeah, me. And that avoidance can come from a couple different things, right? Is one, it's going back to those money scripts that you might hold deep down. And that could be like, if you heard the message, money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford this, or money is the root of all evil, like that sends these messages to our brains that like now you might be actually like pushing money away because it might signify to you if you have too much money and you're getting too rich, maybe you're now a greedy person, and greedy people are bad people, right? So there's this like definite pattern that we can kind of follow. For me, I often heard, we can't afford that. And it would be like a $10 toy that I was asking for. And yet my parents would come home with like, I don't know, a $300 grill the next day. And I'd be like, wait a second, you can afford that, but we can't. Like the mixed messages are real, right? And so I think examining that a little bit can be helpful. Now, I'm not inner child deep working therapist. I'm a solutions focused brief therapist. So I think it's important to examine it, but then I'm very quickly like, okay, and let's change it. But I do think
it can be like figured out by patterns that you're currently in.
Yeah.
So it's not like it takes a deep dive.
No, totally. You're absolutely right. And so just being able to kind of extract some of that of like, oh, that could explain why I'm doing this avoidance stuff, why I'm not opening the emails that say, bill, or why my mail is just piled up in the corner, not looking at that, or, doing the thing. I quite literally had a client that was like, I would check my bank accounts. Like she would like cover her eyes with their hands and just kind of like peek out her fingers. Like she literally was like that averted from looking at her stuff. So I think that's a really, really common one. That like I said, primarily with women, but sometimes men as well. And on the flip side with men, they are really pushed into that quote unquote provider role. And not all of them want to identify with that role. And this is a huge generalization, but I do see this often, especially like I said, in my couples work, that they feel this pressure, this obligation to be the one doing the finances, to be the one looking at all the numbers. And some of them are like, this is my worst nightmare. Like, this is my husband's worst nightmare, right? Like, he is like, I do not want to look at the numbers. And that's okay. But we have to really examine, like, where is that coming from? Is that at like a bigger macro level? Is that self-induced? Probably a little bit of both. And so, yeah, we can kind of look at each, and everyone is unique in this, but those are definitely some through lines that I see in the work that I do.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest miscommunications that couples have about money, that maybe our listeners could really use in their day to day?
I often see that one partner is an avoider and the other partner is maybe what I would call like an optimizer, right? And then they marry each other and it's always like that. And so the optimizer is the one who's like, I'm in the spreadsheet. I like love this stuff. Like, why can't you just come over here and look at the spreadsheet and understand what I'm talking about, right? And the avoider is like, warning signs all over, this is scary, like they're like, please don't talk to me about it. And that one who might be like the optimizer, let's say, is feeling like they're really carrying the team of the partnership and they don't really necessarily want to be the one that's like doing all of it, or maybe the permission grantor, like the avoider is the one coming to, and can we afford this? And then the other person has to give permission, and like, who wants that with their partner? Like, I certainly don't want to go to my partner and say like, hi, can I afford my massage? Like, I want to have like an equitable conversation about it. That's like, hey, does this feel right for us, or whatever that looks like. And so it is really interesting talking with couples. I love the couples work that I do because of the dynamics and who's played what role, because guaranteed that optimizer oftentimes doesn't feel like they are really contributing to that. They're like, I'm just begging, my partner to come on board with me. And I'm like, well, how are you approaching that conversation? Are you understanding why the avoider is feeling the avoidance that they are? And we break down some of that, because what's happening is that that optimizer is like, this is my way, this is the right way. And the truth is the avoider is probably not receiving that very well, because their brain is not understanding it the way the optimizer. So we need to find common ground. And so that is a really common scenario that I see.
I have a friend who, she always categorizes it as, she would say her husband's a flyer. I guess that's like a term that's out there. Meaning he doesn't really think, I don't know that avoiding is really the issue. It's just doesn't really think about it. Like, it doesn't worry about it, doesn't stress about it. It just kind of flies and goes, whereas she's very security driven. So like for her, it's really important to know those numbers and to spell it all out. And I need to share one of your posts with her because it cracks me up. But you had a post that said, how do you blow $10,000 in a year? And it was like $26 a day or something like that. And she would love that. Like, it's that kind of nitty gritty kind of detail stuff that just blows your mind when you like do the math.
It truly is. And people, oh my gosh, that reel, it has like 14 million views on it. Like, people,
that's crazy,
bananas about it. And so many of the commenters were like, wow, I really didn't want that math to be real, but it's real. And I'm like, yeah, it's not, it doesn't take that much.
Well, you think about it, like that's your lunch anymore. Like if you go out to eat for lunch at work, that's 10 grand a year. That's crazy to think about it that way. Yeah, it's definitely mind blowing. It's not a fun math.
Well, here's the deal. On the other side of it, here's what I will say about it is, I am not the person ever to be like, you should not be going out to lunch every day because it's $10,000. My angle is like, if that's moving the needle for you, do it. If you are like driven by convenience, I have 2 toddlers. I am like, give me all the convenience in the world. I will accept it open handedly. I don't know. But there are phases of life where we're like, okay, but what else could that money be doing for you? Right. And so sometimes you truly are like, no, the $27 is so worth it for lunch today. And other times you're like, actually, I have this bigger goal to do something with my family or with my friends or whatever that is. And you're like, actually, I would rather put that money towards savings. I would rather do something different with that. And that's okay. Right. But it really comes down to, and this is true for individuals and it is true for couples, just knowing what your priorities are, not what social media is telling you your priorities should be, not what your parents have, ingrained deeply in you that your priorities should be, nothing like that. Like we need to really take time to turn inward and say like, no, this is what I'm prioritizing. And this is how it's going to be reflected in my spending. So in my bank statements and in my calendar, right? Your time is important. And I want to see the stuff in your calendar.
I love that you put it that way, because it's just an awareness, like just be aware that that's what's happening.
Right.
And if you've
right.
got like a big spend or something comes up and you're thinking, gosh, how am I going to afford that? Like if you think I cannot eat lunch I cannot eat lunch out. I could save money in that regard. And I maybe could save the money I need to do that thing that I don't think that I can afford in this moment. It's all those little things. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Truly, it really is.
Yeah.
And because it's so easy nowadays to spend money. I mean, literally 2 clicks with a thumb and you have a package at your door in 2 days. Like it truly is almost like magic. And it's designed that way. So actually it takes more brain power to not to click your way into financial disparity. So I think it's really important to put intentionality back into our finances. And again, making those very intentional, very mindful decisions of like, it is okay. I love spending money. I have no problem spending money, but it's because it's on the things that do bring up that baseline level of happiness versus something like, I just don't want to get off the couch. So I'm going to DoorDash something to my door and pay $12 in a convenience fee and blah, blah, blah. Right. Like that's not like, to me, that doesn't actually, I know I said I love convenience and I do in many ways, but that's not the convenience that I want to spend my money on. Right.
Right.
And so again, I'm not shaming anybody who wants to DoorDash, but is that really aligned with your priorities right now? And if the answer is yes, by all means. If the answer is no, then don't do it,
Yeah. So how do you start that conversation with your spouse? How do you get on the same page?
Great question. So many couples have never had just like a positive, healthy interaction around money, because as I said, one person is usually feeling anxious. There's a lot of defensiveness that's coming up, or it's done in like, oh, you spent how much on the credit card this month? And right. And so what I ended up doing one day with this is what we did in our house. We had we had already done a lot of this work, but I think it's a really good starting place for couples. Is we had a really numbers heavy money date. It was in November, a couple of years back. And my husband was just like, oh my God, like, like he was just kind of dragging. And I was like, I know, but this is a really important thing. We got through it. It was great. And then I said, the next money date we have, we're not going to get into the spreadsheet. We're not at all. And we didn't. What I did instead, now this is not for every couple, but I think it's important to hear that instead I told him, I'm going to go to the gas station. I'm going to get like $30 worth of scratch offs. And I want you to start thinking about, what would you do if we win $10,000? What would you do if we win $100,000? And what would you do if we won $1 million? And we did that, and we had a really lovely date. He poured me my wine, I poured him his bourbon, the kids were in bed, and we just dreamt together. And I think couples forget and it sparked a really fun conversation between us. Now, do you need to actually gamble to do this activity? No. So a lot of people are like, wait, she's a financial therapist telling me to gamble. Okay, red flag. But what I will say is like, it created like this really fun, and my husband is like the big hunter, like burly guy. And he was like, I would vacation in Greece if we could go anywhere. And my jaw was on the floor. Like, even after being together for 10 years, I was like, what? So it was fun. And then we did our little scratch off thing. We won $0, but I'm like $30 for a date night. And we had super good conversation, and it was all money driven. Like, it truly was. And so I think if you can just really purposefully make a conversation around money that isn't strewn with negativity, see where your priorities are. Like, what, if you won $10,000, maybe your spouse is like, I would pay off all of our debt. And maybe you're like, I would take a vacation. And you guys can talk about like, well, what should we actually do? It just creates like a nice entry into that conversation.
How do you navigate financial power dynamics that might come into play?
Mm-hmm. That one can be tricky. It depends on the person's personality. I have had a couples who, if and this is in a heterosexual relationship, typically that I see this dynamic, that if the male is providing more financially, sometimes I see that there is a power struggle there where he almost feels entitled to, like, it's his money. Mm-hmm. And we kind of have to do a hard reset, because in that specific dynamic, I will, kind of deconstruct some of that thinking of like, yeah, when you were single 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it is, you would have done things differently with your money. And also, you wouldn't have had this beautiful partner who's been able to provide other things for you in your life, like support and love and encouragement and maybe household duties and familial, like, right? Like, so in like the traditional way, but it's a lot of re-educating, deconstructing some of those really deep-seated beliefs. And it is a tricky one because they are very, very deep in there. So it's peeling back a lot of layers, but I'm happy to report that it is very doable. And it's just kind of working through some of like, what is each partner able to bring to the table, and really, how are we talking to each other about some of that stuff, right?
Yeah. When you work with families, are you working to help them get out of debt, kind of hit some of those big hurdles that are keeping them from having peace and safety in the home in terms of like financial safety?
Totally. Yeah. I kind of run the whole gamut on what I do. Some of it is simply just around education, where people are like, I have money and I just don't even know what to do with it. And I'm like, well, let's make a plan. Other people are like, I have debt, or I've been in cycles of debt, right? Where they're able to kind of claw themselves out, but then they're right back in it. And they're like, what am I doing wrong? And so just recalibrating some of that stuff. Certainly we make it what's called a good planner. So a get out of debt planner. And actually, I have an entire intentional spending planner that is available on Etsy. It's the same one I use in my household and with all my clients. And it's really just about, how are we organizing our money? How is it flowing through our household? What systems do we need to have in place? How can we have money dates that are really productive and efficient and fun? And looking at all of those things together. And then we do talk about wealth management stuff, where I'm just educating on like, what are the options. I'm certainly not an account manager. I'm not holding any of that stuff. But that's, it's important to know who's on your financial team, and what you are paying them. And that's kind of into the weeds, but financial advisors are typically taking a bigger percentage than what people might not know. And so we look at some of that together and say, like, is that where your financial priorities are lying? Do you want to be paying a financial advisor this much, or do we want to maybe reevaluate and do something a little differently? And so we're just talking about all of that kind of stuff.
So I love how you kind of term it financial self-care, just really thinking about it as self-care. Mm-hmm. So let's start there. Where do you begin to really kind of understand financial self-care?
Well, it's really a mindset shift that we're making, right? Because so many people, self-care has become a bit of a buzzword lately, and truly big conglomerates have really taken a hold of that and been like, self-care, you need this, self-care, you need that. And it's just like been branded into this whole idea of like, you need all of these things to care for yourself. And the truth is, all of those things are fine and dandy. Like I said earlier, like I love getting massages. And I like knowing how I'm paying for that massage, because if I'm in that massage, having tension release and all that stuff, and then I come home and 20 minutes later, I'm financially stressed because I don't know what's happening with my money. Well, it didn't really do a whole lot. Right. And so I like to think of it as like taking care of yourself by taking care of your money, knowing how you are paying for this stuff, having a clear plan, having clear priorities, and then using your money accordingly to really live a fulfilled life for today and saving for tomorrow. And so, yes, of course, there are multitude of things we can do, and self-care, financial self-care is a big broad thing, because there are little things, like I call them micro barriers, that we can do to kind of put in place and get a jump start. But then there's like that deeper stuff that we're getting into about, like, I work with a lot of women who have a lot of self-worth, concerns. And so they're really buying stuff to try to increase their self-esteem, to increase that self-worth. And we deconstruct some of that. Like, why are you feeling this way? Why are you getting your hair done and your nails done and Botox and all this stuff? Because you're not feeling good enough in your own skin. Let's talk about a little bit of that. And what do we really want to put our money to, and some of it's, again, totally fine if you have the finances to afford that. But if you're putting yourself in debt to do that, then we need to like look at how to reconstruct some of that. So there's a whole mess of things that go into financial self-care, but it really boils down to living that fulfilled life, having that intentionality in your money, so you are truly taking care of yourself.
Your recent podcast episode about the Enneagram and money styles, I really enjoyed, because I'm a 9.
Okay. Yes.
And I was lucky right in. Of course, I had to wait because 9 is at the end of the podcast. You went through the whole list, but
yes.
It's like in our family, for example, I'm definitely, I wouldn't say again, I'm the avoider. I kind of identify more with that flyer personality. I just don't stress about it. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to follow someone else's rules about it. It doesn't cause me stress unless I'm in charge. Like if I'm in charge and I have to figure that stuff out, definitely. But my husband loves that stuff. He's like you. He just eats that stuff up. So I let him kind of run the show. And he's definitely an envelope thinker. Like our whole marriage, that was kind of like his way of saying, okay, yes, you can do, whatever you need to do, but it has to come out of this envelope. Yeah, you can't touch this envelope. The envelopes, you can't trade in the envelopes. You can't steal from this envelope to offset another envelope. And we do that all digitally, but it's just really funny to me because I feel like one of the biggest hurdles looking at, like, for example, my kids, it's just that lack of savings that a lot of our, a lot of families have, a lot of our young people have. Life today is just really expensive. So having that envelope, I mean, that's my kids grew up with envelopes. I'd like to know what trauma we've given them about money.
Oh my gosh, I don't think so at all. Look, here's the thing. I'm like, as long as you are having solid conversations with your kids about money at all, they're already light years ahead, right? Whether or not you're doing it the right way or the wrong, like, know your kids and you know the style that's worked for you and your husband, and you're over there being a 9. You're like, I'm just happy to keep the peace. Like, I'm good. Right. And so, but no, I think even having that introduction into, and same with like the language thing that I was talking about, right? Is I'm never, ever going to tell my kids that we can't afford something, because the truth is we could afford it, right? I know that. it's about whether or not we want to pay for the thing. Are we prioritizing the thing? So if we're at the store and my daughter's like, Mommy, I want this Barbie dress thing. I'm like, honey, we're not prioritizing that right now because, and I'll explain to her right now, we've decided as a family, we want to go down to Texas and visit our in-laws. So that's what we're prioritizing right now. And then there's other times that we go to the store and they ask for something and I'm like, yeah, let's prioritize that today. And so understanding that like the power actually comes back to them. It's not in anybody else's hands. It's not, the money doesn't have power over us. We actually get to decide where our dollars are going to be spent. And to your point about the saving stuff, it does get really tricky. And so for me with my kids, I'm like, I would rather them make $50 mistakes now in their youth than I would make them, I don't want them to make $50,000 mistakes later on. And so money mistakes are going to happen. That is okay. They're going to choose to spend a little bit more than save right now because it's more instantly gratifying, and some of that is just the conversations that we're willing to have with, whether it's with ourselves, our partners, our kids. It's all really important to like make sure that we're talking about it in a healthy way.
So just having those conversations really is the place to start with our kids. We've got to have those money conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? If you are listening to this and you're like, wow, I do not feel confident enough to talk to my kids about money, be transparent with kids. Kids love vulnerability. And of course, there's a line that we don't need to cross. You don't need to say, well, I'm in $80,000 worth of debt, whatever that is. Right. But saying like, I never understood finances. It was just never something that was taught to me in school. My parents didn't really talk to me about it. And we're not blaming anybody while we're telling them this, but we're just being open and we're saying like, but now I really want to learn about it. Do you want to come along and like learn some of this stuff with me? And they're going to be like, yes, immediately. Yes. Like they're curious. They love it. And kids know that money makes the world go round more so maybe even than like adults really realize. And they are genuinely curious. And so if you can have some of those conversations, like, some things are going to change. When we retired my husband out of corporate America in September, and we had a family meeting about it. And my kids, again, are really young, but we want them to know that their voice is heard and important. And we just said, look, if daddy leaves his job, that means we're going to pull back on going to restaurants. We're not going to be doing as many family outings, stuff like that. But it also means that daddy's going to be home a lot more with you. And you'll actually get to see your daddy, which for a long time wasn't the case, And my daughter was like, yay, daddy. Like she was so excited, but we wanted to hear how they felt about the decision and make them, involved in that. And they were totally fine to not go to restaurants as frequently like that. It just, but I think again, even if you are not somebody who's able to save in a 529 plan for your kids, that's okay. The bigger thing to do is educate your kids around what money can do for them and help them along that journey. And they will still like be, again, light years ahead.
Let's talk about allowances. What are your feedback or tips for parents about allowances? What should they consider?
I love allowances, big advocate of them. And here's why. It just gets the conversation going. What I will say is if you are going to commit to doing allowance with your kids, commit to it, right? Have it be a consistent thing that you're really good about, doing easily. So for us, we were initially going to wait until my daughter was 5, but she was just really interested in it. She's really responsible. And we were like, you're ready. And I talked to her beforehand and I asked her, said, do you want to start learning about money? And, some of the things mommy does for my job and whatever. And she's like, yeah, I want money. I was like, okay, great. And so we got her a little container with 4 little buckets in it. And we labeled them together: invest, save, give, and spend. And because she's 4 years old, she gets $4 a week. So ahead of time, I went to the bank. I got $200 worth of ones because she's also at the stage where, ones are way more important. Like 4 ones are or 5 ones are way better than a $5 bill. And then we got a money box off of Facebook Marketplace. It was like $2. And we did it all together where I was like, okay, this is the money, this is where it's going to come from. And so we had it all situated to make it really easy to be consistent doing this. And every Wednesday, we just habit stack that kind of into our morning routine. And we attach it to chores. You can, you cannot. It really does not matter. There's really strong opinions about that. Honestly, I'm like, do your thing. You know your kids. If it feels good for you, do it. If it doesn't feel good for you, don't. Who cares? That's not the point. The point is to talk about money and how we're allocating it and prioritizing some of those things. So for us, we gave her $4 bills, and the expectation is that $1 goes in each bucket. When she turns 5, she'll get an extra dollar and she gets to decide where that dollar goes. And she does have a 529 plan, and she's investing in that. And anytime she puts money in the bank, mommy matches her 100%. And so if she wants to put more money in investments, she gets more money in investments because I'm matching it, right? And then savings, we've talked about what savings might, and you can lean in and play on what your kids are super into. Right now, my daughter is obsessed with Paris. So we're like, yeah, girl, we're saving for Paris. Let's go see the Eiffel Tower. And that I'm sure will change. But right now it's like fun to have that conversation. And then I really encourage her to spend. And when we go and we spend that money, it's not like a, hey, let's go to the store. Mommy has to grab a couple things. You can buy something while we're there. It's a, we're going to go to the store and this is for Kinsley. Like I am not there getting my own stuff. It's like an event for her to take time and look at the toys and decide what she wants. And then, you know, come home and then I can go back and do my grocery shopping later. But it's really intentional time for her to learn and ask questions and whatnot.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea of making it all about the experience of going shopping.
Yeah.
Getting the thing that you think in your mind that that's what you're going to purchase, and then having to go through that process, and you're not rushed because you're not trying to get through your list as well. That's really, really smart.
Yeah.
I love that. What about, let's talk about teens. What about credit cards for teens? What's your stance?
So one of like a hack that a lot of people don't really know is if you are using credit cards, I hate to use the word responsibly because it feels icky to be like, well, some people are not responsible. But if you are paying your credit cards off in full and on time every single month and you have really good credit, if you add your teenager as an authorized user on that card, you're actually helping them build credit earlier on, which is really nice. So then, you know, there's a whole rabbit hole we can get down with credit card or with credit scores that we won't. But the nice thing about credit scores is obviously if you are looking to take out a loan, whether that's a mortgage, student loans, whatever, if you have a high credit score, the interest rate is actually better for you. And so if you can help them by building that credit score up and getting their credit higher earlier on, then by all means do it. Now, I've heard of all sorts of different ways people like to do this, whether they get their teen a credit card and they're like, this is your limit, this is your responsibility. And of course, there are the teens that are a little, you know, they have a spending, I don't know, explosion, and they really go at it. And the parents are really good about then saying like, okay, you've now lost the responsibility to that card. And in fact, you owe us with interest on that money, and setting up a payment plan with their kid. And again, like, is that fun to do? No. Is it a fantastic learning lesson earlier on? Yes. And so I think there's some of that, but if like your teen has a job, ooh, I love it. Like open up that custodial Roth IRA with them, talk about investing with them, talk about what it, you know, means to be what they might be saving for in a high yield savings account. There's so much to get into with teens. I love, oh my gosh, what a fun age. Yes.
But you want to give them opportunities to work with money within your guidance and your sphere. I know growing up, I didn't really understand credit cards until I was well into my 20s, and they were throwing, you know, credit card applications at us at college. I don't know, like, you know, we'd go to the bookstore and free money. And, you know, I knew it wasn't free money, but I had friends that didn't, and got into trouble, and they had to find out the hard way later. But having that opportunity to do that at home and to give some guidance and to help them think ahead, especially in those early ages where their prefrontal cortex need a little extra support.
A little extra support. Yes, totally.
They
And
got
you
to be
know
able to
what?
think that through.
Uh-huh. Yes, yes. And what I think is really interesting is, I don't know if this was true for you, but certainly for me, I heard the message like, don't go into credit card debt, like only spend what you have. But that is where the message stopped. There was never an explanation further. Like, this is why, this is what interest means, this is what it does, this is how it works. There was not that extra added layer of like, why. It was just like a don't do this thing. So for parents out there of teens, I would say that is one thing that can be, even again, super beneficial for them to like explain what the thing is, but then explain why the thing exists and why we're actually telling them about this in a way that they'll understand. And there's some really good resources out there now, for teens, but again, like they really truly want to learn about this stuff. There's like such this myth that people are like, even if I had personal finance in high school, I wouldn't have done anything with it, I wouldn't have cared. And I'm like, what a load of crap. We would have learned, we would have loved it, it's fine.
I only ever remember like how to do the checkbook. That's all I really ever learned in school.
Truly,
About
yes.
finances.
They never taught us anything.
No.
And I'm like, come
I think in
on.
8th grade, we had a lesson where we had to like furnish a home or something, and they gave us fake money. And then we had to like, try to figure out how much things cost. And then I remember that experience, talking about, those childhood experiences. Now I was older, obviously, but I remember that vividly because my mom was like, well, you'd never be able to live on this much money. And so like, in my head, I was like, wow, you need a lot of money in order to
Totally.
survive. And so there was a little bit of stress, I think, associated with it because, mattresses are expensive. I was blown away by the cost of a mattress. So it
That's
was
a
a good
really
learning
good activity,
opportunity, though.
though. That's fun.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? A lot of times I'll tell parents too, if you are taking family vacations, whether that's annually or whatever, like I encourage you, first of all, you need to know your numbers first, right? So if we, what is that? Like practice oxygen mask, finance, where it's like you need to take care of yourself first and then help your kids. So you need to understand your numbers. But if you're going on a family vacation and you're like, yeah, we have $5,000 that we're planning on spending, include them like as young as 8 years old. You can be like, we're going to go to, these are like 3 places that we're considering. Let's build this out a little bit. What are the flights to get there? What is the hotel looking like? What are the excursions that we want to take? The food, right? And plan it out with them so a little bit. And I think giving that some of that autonomy to say like, what does this look like, what are the scenarios, like that's super fun. And then they also have a stake in it where they're gonna enjoy that vacation so much more because they helped plan it. Like the fun part about vacations is it's like a triple fold excitement, right? Where you get to like plan the thing, which is super exciting and fun, you get to go on the thing, which is super exciting and fun, and then you get to come home and have memories about the thing that was super exciting and fun. So like it's so fun. So like let your kids be a part of all 3 stages of that.
And, if you're planning through it, then there's no remorse, right? There's no buyer's remorse at the end.
Right.
You can just enjoy.
You can just enjoy it.
What's your advice for 529 plans, college savings plans? You've kind of talked about them a little bit. Let's dig into that a little bit.
I love a 529 plan, particularly because of the new law that was passed in early 2024 that now says if you fund that and you have $35,000 in that account and you don't use it for educational expenses, now you are actually able to roll that money into a Roth IRA, which is a really great post-tax investment account. And so a lot of people I know were worried, like, what if my kid doesn't go to college and now they have to take the penalty and blah, 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 blah. That really has mitigated some of that. And so it becomes a really, really great account to help your kids financially for a very long time. So that's number one. And also, even if you end up having to pay the 10% penalty or whatever, so much of that is like in the compounding interest. And at least you're doing something for your kid. Like, I just think it's so great. So I love a 529 personally. I actually just put out an episode on my own podcast on financial self-care about this specifically. So if people want to learn, it's called Building Generational Wealth. And I talked to a woman specifically about all the different, there's like 4 different investment accounts that you can consider for kids. Both of us were, we agreed that the 529 is our favorite. There is also a custodial Roth IRA, which I mentioned a little bit about if you have teenagers and they're working a W-2. You can also hire your kids in your business. That gets a little convoluted, but it's possible, which is a really beautiful account, again, to set them up for later. And then you could just have a brokerage account in your own name if you're not so trustworthy of what your kid is going to do at 18 years old. But that's a really great way to maybe help them out with a down payment or a wedding or I don't know, yay, you got an amazing job. Let's go take a vacation and celebrate. I don't know, whatever it is for you. But that one's under your control. So if that feels a little bit better, that's great. But it's just a regular taxable brokerage account. So there's a lot of really good investing options for kids, and kids got time, and we love time when we're talking about investing. So that is huge.
I love, in one of your posts, you talked about how you had closed your kids' savings and checking accounts because your kids are young, they're little, and just are focusing on that 529 as the option, which I thought was super smart because your point in your post was that, it's not working for them, meaning the money's not actually doing work for them sitting in that checking and savings account.
Yeah. And we, as I said in that post too, we are very privileged that we have family members who live, all around the country. And so my kids will get $20 for Valentine's Day and $50 for Christmas or whatever. And so we started really, that by the time my daughter was quite young, she had like $500 sitting in that savings account that, to your point, was not working for her. Like it was like 0.01% savings yields or something, which is just really pathetic. And I really thought, again, I want my kids to be involved in so much of this. Like, why would which I did this, but I went to the bank, I opened the accounts all for them. And I'm like, well, doing things for my kids is really not teaching them anything. So I'm going to close these all out, put that money in an account like a 529 that is working way harder for her. And then when at an appropriate age where she can actually, both of them can understand this is a bank, this is how we do some of this, and that you can open your own account when she's, again, 8, 9, 10, whatever. It's just going to help her start understanding this more rather than me doing it for her. She's really doing it, and I'm there as her support person.
Do you work with your family? Like we talked about, money kind of being that traumatic thing that we've learned early on in that relationship. And as someone who really loves to talk about financial awareness and help other families, how has that gone in your own family dynamic in terms of like your mom and dad or brothers and sisters?
I am an open door when it comes to it, and I am never going to pressure any of them to this is the thing you should do. But it was very sweet. The other day, my brother called and was like, he's, getting a new job or whatever, or no, it was a benefits thing, that it was benefits renewal. And he was like, so I'm wondering about, this, and should I do that? Because this like best kept secret is the HSA. If you have access to an HSA, which only about 10% of Americans do, but if you do have that high deductible plan, you can actually fund that, invest those funds, and then turn in all your receipts when you're 60 years old and get reimbursed for everything. And so if you can pay for stuff out of pocket and be investing in that HSA, it is a triple tax advantaged account. So it's not tax going in, it grows tax free, and you take it out tax free so long as it's used for those medical expenses. So it's like a really nice account. And so it was very sweet. My brother called and asked me about some of that and to educate him a little bit about how it works and the systems that we have in place in our family. But it's certainly not something I'm ever going to call him up and be like, hey, do you know about an HSA? And, but yeah, no, they consume my content, they listen to my podcast. And so if they have questions, I am certainly happy to answer, but yeah, I'm not going to be like, oh, this is what you need to know here. So yeah, that's kind of how it works for us.
I only ask. I know in my family, we just never talked about money. So I don't think that we still don't talk about money.
Not happening. Yeah, it's definitely opened some doors, I would say, and really good conversation of, lots of things. Like we have a really strict rule in just my husband and I that like we are never going to borrow a family member or a friend money. We just simply won't. It creates too many conflicts and this weird power dynamic that we're not interested in. So if at any point a family member or a friend comes to us and says like, look, I'm really struggling, I need some money, we would be open to the conversation. We would look at our financial picture and see if there's anything to give. And we would consider giving money to somebody, but that is truly, it is a gift. It is not like okay, but you're going to pay us back and with interest and whatever. And so that's been kind of an interesting concept and things that I think some people, haven't really thought of. So just having some of those money rules in your partnership and even among family, like my whole content and everything is about all this stuff. So I guess if my family doesn't want to come to me directly, they can get the information through my emails or my podcasts or the social media stuff. But no, yeah, it's been a really good way to kind of spark some of that.
What are some resources that you recommend for women, men, couples to help them really kind of make that mindset shift about their finances?
Yeah, my very favorite, I mean, again, I have so many resources. So please, if this stuff resonates with you, please come follow along. I welcome it. But the number one book that I really, really love to recommend to anybody, and I even had my husband listen to it because I was like, it's really powerful, is called Your Money or Your Life. And it's by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. And it is really a good conversation of like, what are you putting your life's energy towards and how is your money kind of funding some of that? And I really just like that framework of how they talk about money and how they reframe some of these things that are like for example, one of the things they talk about in there is your job so stressful that you're coming home and you're having, you're cracking a beer and you're planning vacations because you need to escape your life or whatever. And like how much of your money is really going to like coping with the stress of your life, really. And is there a way to like change that and be more mindful around some of those things? And when I had my husband listen to that, that was really one of the conversations that was really healthy between us, between like, hey, you are in corporate America, you are gone for 10 to 12 hours a day at your job. And yeah, you're providing for our family, which is huge. And also a lot of your life's energy is getting sucked into something that's not even yours, like, so we really started shaping our lives a little bit differently and thinking about money a little bit differently. And so that would be like top resource. I listened to it on Audible and I just loved it. So
where can our listeners find you? What resources do you have available for them?
Yeah, so I am financial therapist Lindsey on Instagram. That is the only social media that I really am active on. So come on over there and find me. My podcast is Financial Self-Care with Financial Therapist Lindsey. And so you can listen to all sorts of episodes over there. The Enneagram one has been like really taking off. People are liking that one a lot. So I start there. It's super fun. And then my blog is financialselfcareblog.com. And that's where I have an entire financial therapy page. So if you're interested in learning more about like the one-to-one services that I offer, by all means come there. But I'm a solopreneur. It's me always answering you. So if you email me, it's me responding. If you DM me on Instagram, it's me responding. And I love to talk about this stuff. So if you have questions or comments, or you listen to this episode and you just want to tell me about it, please do. I love it. And that's where you can find me.
I love your content because you're just so down to earth. There's nothing that would make someone feel like they're in a space where, they would feel intimidated to talk about finances. I love how authentic you are online. So thank you for sharing all of your content. Yeah, it's been wonderful. I had fun doing my research to talk to you today. So
oh, good. Oh, that makes me feel so good. It's like, isn't this a weird space that we're in where I'm like, I'm creating this content. I don't know. Is it hitting? Do people like it? The podcast, especially, you're like, I don't know, I'm just gonna put it out there and hope so. Like if somebody comes in and is like, oh, I really liked this, I'm like, oh, yay, oh, I'm not just talking to the abyss. Amazing.
I know. I totally get that. Thank you so much, Lindsey, for joining us. We want to be mindful of your time. So we are running out of time in our conversation and we need to wrap up. But this has been a fantastic conversation. We want to thank our guest today, Lindsey Konchar, for sharing her knowledge and experience with our listeners. Lindsey, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with today that maybe we didn't get to hit?
The only thing that I would say is if you, no matter where you are on your financial journey and you see kind of a bigger thing for you, whether that's getting out of debt or investing a little bit more aggressively or anything in between, take 2025 and make this year just like a little harder for you, 5% harder, 10% harder, and be more intentional with your money. And I'm talking about avoiding the one click to buy option on a certain platform that just Jeff Bezos, owns, whatever it looks like for you, but do the thing that's going to make it just a little harder to make the next 20, 30, 40 years of your life that much better and richer. And I really think there's so much power in that. And just, again, there's so much hope in this. So that's what I'll say. That's it.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip to end on. Okay, moms, thank you so much for listening today. If you like us, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Brainy Moms. Do it now before you forget. If you liked our show, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating review on Apple Podcasts so that we can reach more parents like you. If you would rather watch us, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Brainy Moms. And if you want to learn more about our sponsor, Learning RX and cognitive training, you can find me on TikTok at the Brain Trainer Lady. That's all the smart stuff we have for you today. We hope you feel a little smarter. So see you next time on the Brainy Moms podcast.